You gorgeous individuals, it's Kav here, and today I'm going to be bringing you all my summer book haul. I've accumulated more than a decent number of books this summer, so I thought that I would share them with you all because book hauls are apparently really popular on BookTube and they're really fun to film because it's like getting a little taste of a book without having to consume the whole thing. The first book on my list is The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. It is a historical fiction novel that features a main character who is going on his grand tour of Europe, and it has a male-by-male romance in it. I was lucky enough to see this author in conversation with Anna Marie McLemore, and it was a beautiful conversation. I absolutely adored watching the two of them talk, and I managed to get my copy of this book signed, and Mackenzie was wonderful to meet, so I am even more hyped for this book and for the sequel, which I believe is called The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy. It just sounds like a few really fun novels, and I'm excited to dig more into historical fiction because I've never really experienced that genre before, so it's exciting to see this take on it. The next book I have on my list is When the Moon Was Ours by Anna Marie McLemore. As I said, I saw her and Mackenzie together, so I decided to pick up one of her books because she was just absolutely wonderful. I loved hearing what she had to say, and I loved hearing her talk about representation, and I'm extremely excited for her upcoming release, Wild Beauty. So I decided to pick this one up because I've heard amazing things about her writing. I've heard that it's just lyrical, and I know that she writes featuring queer people of color teens. I believe that they are all latinx because that is what she is herself. So I know that this book will have some diversity in it. I will have the exact diversity in the description below. I'm really excited to read this one because, again, like The Gentleman's Guide, I think it deals with some writing and some plot and some story that I've never really discovered before, so I'm excited to kind of go out of my regular reading and discover more writing that's different than what I'm used to. The next book on my list is Saints and Misfits by S.K. Ali. I read this book last month with the Book Bound Society and I absolutely adored it. This book does require a trigger warning for sexual assault, so I will let you guys know that beforehand, but I absolutely adored this novel. It features a Muslim hijabi main character, and that's something that I haven't had any personal experience with at all, so it was really interesting and really wonderful to read a book from an own voice's perspective about a Muslim hijabi teen growing up in a society where that's not necessarily seen as the norm, and also read her as a survivor of sexual assault and how she has to overcome that, not just with the stigma in Western society, but also the stigma in her own society and culture. And I absolutely love this novel. I give it 5 out of 5 stars, and it's one of my favorite books of all time because I think it was just so wonderfully written. I got through it in like 2 or 3 sittings and I just absolutely loved it. I loved the way the story was told. I loved how the author approached all different aspects of the character, and I just absolutely adored everything about this novel. The characters, the plot, the writing, so I highly recommend this one because it was such a wonderful read. The next book on my list is GEEKERELLA by Ashley Poston, and I am super excited to read this one. This is probably the least diverse of all my picks, but I did pick it up because I love fairy tale retelling. After YA contemporary, they are probably my favorite genre of books because I love fairy tales. That's something not many people know about me, and I guess this is when you all are discovering it now, but I absolutely love fairy tales and classic stories like that, so I absolutely adore fairy tale retellings and seeing what authors do by taking these pieces that have already been created but putting a unique spin on it. And this one deals with geekiness and cosplaying, so I'm even more excited to read it. It is a Cinderella retelling, if you couldn't tell by the title, that deals with, as I said, geekiness, and the main character cosplays, so I'm excited to read it because it's not only a fairy tale retelling, but it deals with parts of fandom culture that I myself deal with because I obviously, as an internet personality that's in the bookish community, love fandom culture myself, so I'm super excited to read this one, and I'm excited by the surge of those books that I've seen recently. I've seen quite a few books start to incorporate that in their stories more because it is something that many teens deal with and experience in their lives because it's kind of a natural part of being a teen at this point, I think. The next book on my list is Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia, and I am super excited to read this one as well. Like a GEEKERELLA, it deals with fandom culture and online culture a lot. It features a main character who is the author of a webcomic, and there is a supporting character who comes to her school and is actually a fanfiction writer of her webcomic. So I'm excited to see another book that tackles online media and fandom culture and the things that, as I said, we as teens nowadays tend to experience experience and grow up with. And from what I've understood, I think this book also tackles the topic of anxiety from what I've read on the inside cover and what I've heard from fellow bookish people. I think it does deal with that topic, and like all of these other books, I have heard amazing things. If you guys can't tell by now, I tend to pick a lot of recommendations from people I trust, so this is one that I've heard just great things about. I've heard quite a few people say it's become one of their favorite books, so there is a lot of hype going for it. I don't know if it'll match it, but hopefully it does. Another book that I've recently picked up is Tafts Tolstoy by Kathryn Ormsbee, and this is another book that deals with online culture and the culture that many teens now experience. It features a main character who also has written a webcomic / is writing a webcomic, and the main character is asexual, so double points for diversity and for dealing with modern media. I'm excited again to see how this one tackles the topic of modern media like I am with the other two reads I stated, and I'm super excited to read this one. I've heard great things from asexual people who have read this book. They've said that the rep is great, so I'm excited to read this diverse novel that deals with online media. The next book on my list is actually an arc. It is Mask of Shadows by Linsey Miller. I am super excited to read this arc before it comes out, I think in September, if I'm not mistaken. It features a gender-fluid pickpocket, so it has a gender-fluid main character in a fantasy world, which sounds absolutely incredible, and it seems like an incredible book. On the back, it's compared to Leigh Bardugo's writing, so that is a high compliment. I am super excited to read this arc. I've heard amazing things about it, and I've heard that the rep is great, and it's just really exciting to see myself represented, so I'm really excited to read this novel and give it a shot. The next book on my list is Pashmina by Nidhi, and this is, I believe, a graphic novel that deals with a teen who is coming to terms with being Indian and learning about her culture for the first time because she's never really gotten the chance to experience that before. So I'm excited to see this from a perspective of someone really coming into the idea of being Indian and learning about their culture, because I am Indian myself, so it's excited to see that represented in a graphic novel. The next book on my list is 7 Ways We Lie by Riley Redgate, and I am super excited to read this one. The premise is that each of the 7 main characters represents a deadly sin, and from what I've heard, it has pansexual rep and aro ace rep, but the aro ace rep is not explicitly stated on the page, but I think the author has stated that the character is aro ace. So I'm excited to read this one because I think that that's just such an interesting premise that I've never really seen done before, and it also represents 2 queer groups that don't tend to get a lot of representation. So I think that those are 2 very positives I can see in this novel before I've even read it. So I'm excited to read this one and see if it matches up to all the hype I've heard. The next book on my list is When We Collided by Emery Lord, and I am a huge fan of this author. I've followed her on Twitter for a while, and I've just really liked her tweets and just liked what she's had to say. So I'm excited to finally read one of her books. To be honest, I don't know too much about this novel. From the back, I'm assuming that there is a romance, and I've heard that it's won some mental illness representation awards. Not like extremely prestigious awards, but it has been nominated as good mental illness representation. So I'm excited to see a book that deals with mental illness from hopefully an own voices and or well-researched perspective, and I'm excited to read this one because the cover is great, and like I said, I've been a fan of the author for a while, so let's hope that it matches up to what I've heard. The next book I have is You Know Me Well by Nina LaCour and David Leviathan. I recently read We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. I will link my review of it somewhere, and I absolutely adored that novel. I thought that her writing was absolutely beautiful and she did a wonderful job. So when I saw this in the bookstore a few days after reading that novel, I had to pick it up because I would love to collect all of her books at this point. And like the last novel, I don't know too much about it. I mainly bought it because of the author, but from what I've read on the back, it seems like there is some sort of female by female romance and some sort of male by male romance. I don't know the exact details of that, but I am really excited to read it, and from what I know about these 2 authors, there will be representation in this book. The next book on my list is The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness, and I've also finished this one and I absolutely loved it. I have stated that I think that Patrick Ness brings something really unique to his books, and I stand by that statement. I think that he has some sort of imagination or writing quality or something so unique that not many authors can do. So I really love his writing. I loved this book. I can see why so many people list it as their favorite Patrick Ness book. I give it 5 out of 5 stars and I highly recommend it. It is an interesting play on the chosen one trope. It, instead of focusing on the chosen one, it focuses on the ordinary kids, and I think it did that in a really interesting way that hasn't been approached before, which, like I said, is the biggest appeal of his novels to me. Plus it also has some great diversity, so I highly recommend it. All of the diversity will be listed in the description below for you to get more details. The last book on my list is The Library of Fates by Aditi Khorana, and as you can probably see, I am currently reading this one. It is based off of Indian mythology and it takes place in India, so it deals a lot with Indian culture, of course, and all of the characters are Indian, so let's talk about representation. I am thoroughly enjoying the novel so far. It is the Bookbound Society's August book of the month, so I'm reading it with them, and I am completely enjoying it so far. I really love seeing Indian mythology play a part in this, and Indian culture is so important to these characters, and really just seeing a novel that Western society is so excited about that deals with Indian culture and a culture that's different than the one that we see in all books. So I am absolutely loving this so far, and I hope that I continue to love it as I continue reading this novel. Those are all the books I have for this video, and as I said, all of the diversity and trigger warnings will be listed in the description below so that you all can have all the information before choosing what to read. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a like and subscribe because that stuff makes me happy. And go ahead and comment down below if you've read any of these books, and if so, what were your thoughts on them, or what books you've picked up recently and whether or not you would recommend them, because I'm sure we could all use some new recommendations all the time. If you have subscribed, be sure to click that little notification bell because I am posting 2 videos a week instead of 1 this month, so that's double the fun. As usual, all of my social media and my Goodreads will be listed in the description below if you'd like to follow me anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are having a lovely day or night wherever you are. Please remember you're beautiful and you deserve the world. And I will see you this Wednesday with a brand new video. Goodbye!